everybody. My name is Jake St. Dennis Marchand. Known Billy for over 15 years. We've worked together for about 14. Just want to stay buckle your seatbelts. This is going to be a little bumpy here, guys. But everything I'm going to tell you right now, I told Billy Johnson before he died. First time I met Billy, it didn't go so good. I can't lie. I told him to his face, Billy, hate's a strong word, so I won't use that, but I definitely didn't like it. He told me, D, which is what he called me. D, what did I do? How could I have gotten it so wrong with you? And I said, well, Billy, let me just finish and explain. See, I was a young engineer at the time, trying to impress my crew. I studied for probably a week to put on a drill that I thought was the most important thing in my world. And as I'm giving this drill, here comes the hazmaters over here, and I just hear this chirping in the corner of my ear, and in my eye, and it's Billy Johnson, having the time of his life, getting everybody around him to laugh about it. And I just couldn't understand how this guy's having this experience over here while I've got all this pressure over here. So what do you know? Billy Johnson promotes. Where does he end up? He bids my ship. I'm thinking, not this guy. If anybody, not this guy. You gotta be kidding me. So like I told him, once I got to know him, boy did I learn a lot about myself. Why didn't I lighten up? Why aren't I more about people? Why don't people gravitate towards me like they do this Billy Johnson? So, like I told him, no need to apologize, Billy. I actually thanked him. Now, a lot of things that we talked about, some of them are appropriate to talk about right here, most of them not. But some of them are actually pretty funny. I'll never forget the day when Billy came up to me and said, they used to call me Little Billy. And I looked at him and said, Little Billy? Who are these people, Billy, that would call you Little Billy? And he explained, oh, well, D, let me explain, back in the day when I was growing up, my dad's name was Billy, so whenever we'd get carted around, I was Billy Jr. or Little Billy. I go, okay, stop you right there, I get it. Way back when, Little Billy. So that name stuck. I mean, every time I'd see him, I got great satisfaction out of in a crowd of his best friends, knowing he's one of the stockier guys, let's say. Me being a slender kind of guy myself, that I would say, hey, Little Billy, and everybody would turn around and be like, who is he talking about? Couldn't possibly be our Billy Johnson. So I always got a kick out of that. I'd call him out on it all the time. Some of the other conversations we had actually have to do with me standing right up here right now. I'll never forget the time. Like two soldiers in a foxhole, only in the fire department, let's be honest, we're sitting in blue chairs watching the news. And we're sitting side by side wondering, what's the next story? And the story comes up, and as tragic as this story was, it was about a group of skydivers wanting to have the time of their life. They loaded themselves up in an airplane, and that they were wondering, will their parachute open? This plane takes off, and on takeoff it has engine trouble. The plane leans over. Now the irony, as we're looking at each other, of a plane, these guys all thinking, perfectly good airplane, I'm gonna jump out hoping that parachute opens. The problem actually occurred, that the plane wasn't perfect. So as this plane is crashing, a handful of these skydivers jumped out and saved their own life. But yet the other individuals perished, and as tragic as that is, and I would never make fun of any of those people, it's definitely a loss. as the news reporter went on and on about the story of what happened, the classic easy out for the newscaster is to say, well, they died doing what they loved. So I leaned over to Billy and I said, yeah, they sure did. They died living. I mean, that's what I love doing, right? I mean, I wouldn't, crashing in an airplane is not for me, but I sure did love living. And he goes, that's messed up, Dee. How could you say something like that? And I explained, I go, those people got in that airplane living their life to the fullest. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to risk death and cheat it. Didn't pay out that time. And I said, Billy, you promised me this. You're the jokester, you're the guy, you're the funny guy that can go into a room and say anything and just walk out of there like it was supposed to be said. I said, if I die before you, I want you to walk up on that podium, and I'm hoping that I died flying a kite in a hurricane and it dragged me across the road and I got run over by a truck. And I want you to go up there, little Billy, and you tell him, my Dee, he died doing what he loved. And then say living, you know, because that's exactly what it was. And he goes, that's messed up, Dee. You can't expect me to do that. And I said, well, you gotta promise me, we're like buddies, right? So he said, okay, Dee, I'll do that. I won't like it, but I'll do it. So he expressed to me, naturally, it's my turn, and you know, he's like, well, Dee, you know, I've got a fear too. My biggest fear, Dennis, is that when I die, that not a single person will get up there and say anything about me. I don't know why, I just have that fear. And I looked at him like, you gotta be kidding me, Billy. I mean, let's face it. You're the guy who walks into a room, at least the rooms I've been in, and everybody turns, Billy, what's up? You know, and they're high-fiving you, and I mean, it's just like everywhere. Everybody loves you. You're the guy who loves his wife to no end, your kids adore you. How can you say that you don't think that any of these people would want to get up there and say something great about you? Now, the only way that would be, Billy, is if they were grieving to the point, which they probably will be, that they just physically can't get up there. He says, well, Dee, promise me this. Promise me that if I go before you, that you'll walk up there and say something. I say something? Just say something. You got it, Billy. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna be so grief-stricken, I won't be able to function, but I'll pull it together for you. And what I'll do is I'll walk up there to that microphone, I'll pull it to my lips, and I will say something. And then I'm gonna go sit back down. That's messed up, dude. But it's true, Billy. There is no way I can get up there, say anything poignant, anything that would matter to all these people that are grieving. We're all grieving. I don't know that I can do it. As we all know, Billy's final weeks and months, last 18 months in particular, are very tough. His wife had become sick. And in talking with Sophia, nobody understood why. God, why could this happen to us? But Sophia's a strong woman, let me tell you. She stuck by Billy's side to the end, and she's even told me in the last few days here that she really feels like God was preparing her for this exact moment. As she was sick, and as Billy was trying to find his way, God brought all her friends back into her life. She's a very strong woman. But I thank every one of her friends for being by her side. In the final weeks of Billy's life, I had a couple very good conversations with him. I was so thrilled to see that in his Final week said he turned to the ones that loved him the most, the ones that cared about him the most, and the ones that never turned his back on him. He said, Billy, I envy you. Because I couldn't imagine if I was going through what you're going through, that I'd have the support that you have right now. I kind of reflected on a few stories that we had talked about, and one of them was, I said, Billy, did I ever tell you my John 11:35 story? He says, no, B, what's that? I said, well, I went to a private Christian school. Every week, to nauseam, we had to memorize a Bible verse. Learned it on Monday, wrote it on Friday. Learned it on Monday, wrote it on Friday. Spelling, counted, punctuation, you had to know the book, chapter, the verse. Well, one week, Billy, I don't know if the teacher got lazy or what, or if he was trying to do a little team building. He said, you know what, class, all you gather together, and by the end of the class, you tell me what your scripture is going to be. We had the John 3:16ers over here. We had the Proverbs 3, 5, and 6ers over here. And as this discussion went on, I raised my hand. Okay, Dennis, what's your verse? John 11:35. Well, what does John 11:35 say? Well, John 11:35 is the shortest verse in the Bible. It's 2 words, Jesus wept. That's our verse. So everybody unanimously decided John 11:35 is our verse. And I'm telling this to Bill, and he goes, you gotta be kidding me. You know, how did you know that? I go, well, I was raised by missionaries. I spent a lot of time reading my Bible, a little bored in church, and I just figured that out, shortest verse. You know, I was ready for that day, Billy. Well, as much of a hero as I was on Monday, come Friday, since spelling counted, since, you know, you had to know the book, the chapter, the verse, a lot of my friends were pretty lazy. Let's face it, who has to study for that test, right? Come Friday, take a piece of paper out and a pen, and everybody looked around. Oh my gosh, what was our verse again? You know, it was really short. I don't know. How do you spell wept? Is it 1 E or 2? So by the end of that class, and by the end of that week, I went from hero to, well, that's your fault, guys. You know, you didn't study. And there's a lot of 50%, 75%ers there on the easiest possible verse in the Bible. I said, Billy, do you know what John 11:35 means? And he goes, no, D, what does that mean? John 11:35 tells you and me that Jesus wept. Why would he put that in that Bible? I said, let me tell you why, Billy. John 11 is all about Jesus out there preaching, doing his missionary work. And he catches wind through family that one of his best friends, Lazarus, is sick. Come home, Jesus, and heal your friend. So what did he do, Billy? I don't know. He waited 2 days. His friend died. That's messed up, D. Right? Well, why do you think he waited for him to die? Now, Jesus knew, and it even says in John 11, that he knew he could save him. He could raise him from the dead. He could help his best friend in any way. But to prove this point to his family, he let him die. Well, when he got home, to Lazarus' home anyway, Jesus saw the grief on Lazarus' family's face. And I see a lot of that grief right here. I've been seeing it for the last month. And Jesus was so shaken up and so moved by that grief that he wept. Billy, there is nobody on this earth that can say that we understand what we're going through and why. But I can promise you this, that Jesus has felt the pain that you feel. It's the shortest verse in the Bible. The easiest one, but yet probably the least learned or studied. Jesus feels your pain. He knows what you're going through. He says, D, that's amazing. I appreciate you telling me that. But I've done some things that there's no way that God could forgive me, or that I can't even humble myself enough to go and talk to him about it. I said, little Billy, understand this, that when Jesus died, it was a death of suffering. He felt our pain. He knew what it was like. That's the reason he was here. So nobody could say, you just don't understand it, God. You just don't get it because we're human and you're not. He came here and he suffered. And to prove, little Billy, that he can forgive you, look at who he was crucified with. Look to the left, look to the right. Who was it? He goes, I don't know, D, who was it? 2 career criminals. God made a point of putting those people there to say, no matter what you've done, no matter who you are, you can't be as bad as these people right here. And what happened on that cross, Billy? One of them leaned over to him and said, will you remember me? Will you forgive me? And he did in that moment. To be honest with you, that's one of the last conversations I remember of any merit, that I had with my friend. Checked in on him all the time. And while his life was amazing and his death was a tragedy, we'll never have the answers to that, but we will know that God feels our pain. So in closing, Sophia, Tyler, and Matt, I want you to know that your connection to our fire service is not end right here. It's only beginning. If at any time you need anything, you give us a call. So if you will oblige me, everybody here, for just one more moment, as a promise to a lifelong friend, a co-worker to all of us, the guys that knew him the best, know how much he meant to all of us. With all the respect to all of you, I would just like to fulfill a promise that I have to my friend by walking up here to this microphone and saying something. Thank you.